And Miss June is going to introduce our speaker for the evening.
My name is June. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is December 18, 2020, and Shepard of the Hills is my home group. I was asked a couple days would I introduce Anastasia, and they say when the hand of AA reach out, you never say no. So I was like, yeah, I will. My pleasure. Why not? Anastasia came to Shepard of the Hills home group about 7 months ago, and I met her. She's the poster child for service work here. She chairs the Wednesday night meetings. She's on the group conscious. She's a board member. I mean, she's just all in. She came in 10 toes down. She was just ready. She does a lot of service work, and I don't know what else I could say about her. She's here 7 days a week. If you ever want somebody to talk to, you will find her here. I don't know what time of day, but mostly all day. She's in this building here. So, females, if you ever need somebody to talk to, you'll see Anastasia here. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Anastasia.
Alright. I'm Anastasia. My sober date is August 9th, 2022, and my home group is Shepard of the Hills. I'm good at telling my story to small groups of people. Large groups of people make me very anxious, so that's why I got like a notebook. Because it's what, yeah. I was raised in a family with 2 younger brothers. My mom and my dad were together for a while. They were both addicts. My mom did the best she could with what she was given. Come to learn that later down the road. My dad, long story short, my dad passed away when I was 5. And my mom remarried my stepdad later on when I was a teenager, or preteen. I had lots of childhood traumas. Everybody does. Not going to go into those. I never turned to drinking or using when I was young because my mom put the fear of God in me. I took her stories as cautionary tales because of what she'd gone through and everything. Don't get me wrong. I was an addict in a different way. I was very spiritually sick as a child and acted out and did things a child and a teen should never do to try and fill that void, even if it wasn't with substances. I did it in other ways. Later on down the road, I figured that out. Even though I wasn't an addict by the true, like the normal terms, I was doing it in other ways to fill that. I ended up having 3 sons of my own. I have an almost 17-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old, all boys. Graduated college, did all of that. Still never used anything, tried anything. Was very family and education oriented. Submerged myself in school. Like, that was always my safety net, even away from home. Because I knew I was going to get fed at school. I knew nobody was going to beat me up at school. I knew. And I submerged in everything that I could do in regards to school, extracurricular activities, sports, all of it, honor roll, that kind of thing. I realized when I was about a preteen that I got more with honey than I did with vinegar. So instead of doing all the bad things and having an assigned seat in ISS in school, for a good portion of the beginning part of my school year, or school education, I realized one teacher, and I remember her name too, Ms. Whitehead, I had got like perfect on like it was a state assessment. So I lived in Texas at the time. I got like 100% on everything. And it was the first time anybody had actually like ever pointed out like something positive in regards to me other than negative stuff about me. And she kind of pointed me in the direction of you get more when you do good than if you do bad, and it kind of stuck with me for a good period of my life. I tried for the longest time to instill that in my kids and try and exhibit that like in my life. I was raised in a family that was involved in a lot of stuff that I didn't know about growing up because I was the smart one. I was the one that was supposed to get out. I wasn't the one that was supposed to repeat the cycle. So they kept me in the dark about a lot of stuff, which also later on down the road caused at my detriment because I didn't understand or know. I was very book smart, was not very street smart starting out. Learned all of that very hard myself. I got involved with some things I should not have gotten involved with, and some people I should not have gotten involved with, but at that time I didn't know because they were all family. And in my mind, family's supposed to be safe. I just got accepted to nursing school, a program to get my BSN and my RN in 2 years. Super excited. Didn't realize that the stuff that I was doing was leading me into a very not so good place. I call it my rabbit hole. That started my rabbit hole. I say that because my period of use is not just alcohol, so instead of offending anybody, I just call it my rabbit hole. I got involved with somebody that was supposed to be like family, knew him for years, was supposed to be protector. He was an addict. One night he snapped when he was high. I got kidnapped and was almost killed. That was the start of my dark rabbit hole, because after that I wanted to do anything and everything not to remember it. I didn't want the nightmares, I didn't want the night terrors, I didn't want anything like that anymore. So in my flawed logic at the time, even though I knew it was flawed, can't remember anything if you're not awake. So I'd sent my sons away at that time to keep them safe, which in hindsight, after going through my steps and everything, I had harmed them by being absent from them. But in hindsight 2020, it was the better of the decisions than having them with me in my active using. And I'm still rebuilding those relationships still. But I went from using absolutely nothing to using everything within a 6-month span. I lost everything within that 6 months. My house, vehicles, my job. I at least had the foresight to understand and know that what I was doing and where I was going, I didn't want my kids around to see it. And I gave my spot in nursing school up to somebody that I knew could focus on it and actually achieve it, because at that time I knew I mentally was not in a space to be able to achieve what I was wanting to achieve, and I did not want to cause anybody else to be in harm's way because of me. And I at least knew that before I went too far into anything, and I gave that spot up, which is one of like my biggest regrets, because I always wanted, like, helping people was my biggest thing. That's why I went to school, got my degree and everything I had already had. My rabbit hole lasted that time for about 6 months, and it went from 0 to very dark, very quick. The only way I could figure out in myself to get clean at that time was I checked myself into a psych ward. Because I knew I didn't have the willpower at that time, and I knew if I didn't do something, I was going to die. Checked myself in. I got sober, and I was sober for a couple of months on my own. And then I had the bright idea to, I can go back to where I'm from. It'll be okay. No. It's like our book says, we've seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing a drink after a period of sobriety, we're in a short time as bad as ever. If we are planning to stop drinking, we're there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we may be immune to alcohol. Because when I went back and relapsed, I did what everybody else does. Went to using the same amount that I was using when I had stopped. And what I had been doing was that period of time became very scary, very dark, and the people I was involved with, I should be dead or in prison right now. The things I was doing, the people I was with, the things that was going on. And the only thing I could say is God was watching out for me, because there was no other explanation as to why I'm still here. At that time, my wake-up call for that time to get sober was I almost got trafficked. That was when I came to the realization that I was either going to end up dead or wish I was dead. So I hid away for a month, didn't tell my family where I was, didn't tell anybody where I was, because that was my only thoughts of, because of who I was involved with, that I could stay sober. Because I knew if anybody found out where I was just going to go right back to where I was, or even worse. At that time, after about a month of getting sober by myself, because that was the only way that I was going to be around my children, was I was never going to be where they could see me intoxicated. My kids have never seen me inebriated at all, ever. I got sober for a month, and then I made a phone call to my oldest son's dad, and I said, I need you to get me to Branson. He said, all right, I'll be there. Him and his wife came and picked me up. The following day, they drove me to Branson, which is where my family had moved to a few years prior. When I got here, I did the whole trying to white knuckle it on my own kind of thing for a little bit. Realized that I was not going to be able to do it on my own. So the first time I was ever exposed to any sort of like the book or any sort of stepwise or anything was when I had gotten a scholarship to go to, I call it a scholarship, I don't know exactly what it's called, but somebody had paid for me to go to Standing by the Door. I had gotten a bed at Standing by the Door, moved out of the hotel that I had been staying in so that way I could get there. Moved into Standing by the Door and was there, got introduced to the 12 steps and classes and stuff like that. And then during that time, my A person and my 2B people from my house brought me to Shepard of the Hills as my very first ever AA meeting. First time I ever been exposed to AA, first time I ever went to a meeting ever, other than like the classes when I was at Standing by the Door. And you'll hear me say this periodically, and even in meetings, when we're in meetings, little nuggets of knowledge got dispensed on me during that time. I came to a couple more meetings sporadically during the time I was in Standing by the Door. I came to Shepard of the Hills. Anybody actually knows me, I have a big mouth and a big attitude problem sometimes. No. Yeah. And I don't, an incident occurred at the house that I was in, and I don't do bullying. I don't get the whole picking on me kind of thing, and I stood up for myself, and I did it in a manner I shouldn't have done it, and I got kicked out because I came across as threatening or intimidating. I didn't get kicked out for relapsing. I got kicked out because I had an attitude problem. So at that time, I was still sober. I was, at that time, white-knuckling it. I was still spiritually sick. I did not work through all my steps at that time because I was not in the program long enough to actually go through everything. I did have a sponsor. I say that with quotation marks because like I would call her when I needed help kind of thing, but I wasn't actually working the steps with her at that time. But I ended up meeting my best friend. He he was an addict. I still stayed sober for a good period of time during that time, and then I don't even know why I did, or even because that whole little period of time was a complete blur, but I ended up relapsing for about a week. When that happened, an incident occurred where he got arrested and took a charge for me and would not let me take my responsibility for it. So he went to prison for me, and that was my giant wake-up call, realizing that my actions have consequences not just for me but for other people. That was one of my biggest amends that I did, and I was able to do it recently when probation and parole lifted on him and we were able to have contact. But I was still spiritually sick, but my sober date was 8/9/22, and I white-knuckled it for about a year and a half, 2 years, by myself at my house, me and my kids. That's all I didn't want nobody else around, didn't do anything but go to work, come home, kids, work, home, kids. Was not happy. Was very sad during the entire time. All I was doing was making money so I could buy the house, so I could have a home for the kids. That was just I'm like a dog with a bone. If I have a mindset of doing something, and I actually have my heart set on it, I will do it to any means possible. My past came to recently bite me in the butt, and my children were taken into DCFS custody. When that happened, because even during my entire addiction, my kids were never taken. I could always call them, I could always see them, I could always do anything regarding them, because I had set it up that my mom had power of attorney if anything were to happen to me or I was absent, so that way the state could never come get my kids, because I made it so that there was a person that was there for them. I was spiritually sick at that time, and I could not, my reality was not meshing with what other people's realities were. And it took me a long time to understand what was going on outside of my own little world inside my head. The first 2 days after they were taken, all I did was drive the outskirts of Branson. And this was recently. Drive the outskirts of Branson, and then sit in the parking lot the first 2 days. Because I just couldn't bring myself to come into the door, but I knew if I was driving, because I'd always made a promise to myself I would never drive if I was high or if I was intoxicated of any sort, because I've had family members pass doing that. So I drove around town for the first 2 days and then parked at night in the parking lot when the meetings were happening, because I knew I would never disrespect the place by being intoxicated in the parking lot or in the building either. So the third day, I drove and I parked in the parking lot. I made it in the door the third day because I saw a familiar face from when I was standing by the door, walk through the door, so I went behind them and came in the door. Put him on blast, it was Sean. I came in the door, and then I started hearing in depth in regards to the book, the solutions that were inside the book. For me, a big part of it is working through them step by step and going through them all. For me, service work helped me get more out of myself and more towards what I was always wanting to do, which was help other people. Even though I couldn't exactly do what I was wanting to do at the time, because I still know my limitations, and I wasn't at that point in time ready to do anything majorly important. So I started at first, came the first couple of weeks, and then there was an opening on a Wednesday, 8 p.m. for chairing a meeting, so I put my name on the board. So it was the first thing I ever did in regards to service work for the club or anything like that, was I started chairing meetings at 8. And then I was just doing that, and then I got reached out to by another member that he had started initiating a chili cook-off and car show and was needing some help with it. Sorry, Jim, you're not here today, but I took that thing from him. Pretty much made it my baby. With Jim, I'm working on that, getting the donations for it, getting everything set up for it. That's helped fill in some of the time because my kids still aren't in the house right now. It helps fill some of that gap of time of being able to be of service and reading my book, and you can tell it's like marked up a lot, tabbed, doing that. And then I also was approached by a different member of the club and was asked if I would like to become a member of the board, or if I would be interested in at least sitting in and seeing what was going on. And for a while I sat in, and then I was asked to be the co-activities coordinator with Nikki. And I am now the co-activities coordinator for the club as well. In doing that, the state of Missouri has a thing different than I'm from Kansas. So there's a thing called Certified Peer Support Specialists in the state of Missouri. I learned about that, and that I could use my experience and my trauma that I went through in hopes that I could help somebody else so they didn't have to go through a rabbit hole, or at least not as bad of a rabbit hole as what I went down. I looked into it, and I did my training. I found out actually today, because there was a giant if in there, because my kids still are in custody, if I was going to be able to get my certification for it while they were still in state's custody, and I was told yes. So I will be getting my certification itself from the licensing board here coming soon as well for that. But inside doing all these, sorry, getting anxious. For me, like, a big part of having AA and stuff is also like the fellowship of being able to, because I have horrible time sleeping, calling people at 2 o'clock in the morning because I can't sleep, or reaching out and texting people during the day, or like when I'm having like a really bad day, like, sorry those of you that get like the 25,000 messages, that's like, I hope you have a blessed day, because that's my attempt of somebody messaging me back so I can start a conversation. Because I'm like trying to spread a little joy and then get something back so that way we could. And I had a different member who's not here. Like, I was about to go into like a meeting in regards to my kids, and I was like about to have a panic attack, and he just sent me like the 3rd step prayer, and he's like, just keep repeating it to yourself. And then before I even went into the room, before anybody went into the room, I went in there and wrote the Serenity Prayer on the dry erase board at DCFS. So that way when I was staring at the worker, anytime I got upset or she made me mad, I could just look up at the Serenity Prayer and repeat it to myself in my head instead of getting upset, because anything regarding my kids, I get very, I will just say, emotional. And I have to still keep reminding myself, and one of my biggest things, and I've read it a lot of times in meetings and stuff, but like for me, and acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I'm disturbed, it's because I find some person, place, or thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I could find no serenity until I accept that person, place, or thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. And for me, that's one of my things. Like, a lot of people repeat like the prayers and stuff. For me, I have to constantly look at page 417. There's a reason we live in the 417. But for me, like, having to understand, like, I don't have control over anything other than what my next action's gonna be. And I just have to keep doing what I believe my higher power, which I call God, wants me to do. And that's why, like, if anybody calls me and they're like, hey, are you at club? If I'm not already there, and I have nothing to do, I'll come unlock the door and I'll let people come in, they'll come sit, or if one of the girls wants to sit and talk. Still chair the Wednesday 8 o'clock meetings, even though sometimes it ends up just being me and one other person who he shows up and it's independent study with me and him usually. But I always sit in there even if nobody else even shows up, because my fear is that I'll leave early and then that one person's going to walk in late and that one person's going to need somebody to just be sitting there. And that's also, like, even if I have free time, I don't just sit at home, because one, all my kids' stuff's there and they're not there, so I'd rather be here in doing stuff of service or being of a bit availability for somebody else to be able to talk to or something. But for me, having that fellowship of people, even if it's like going to eat after meetings, just so that way we have a little bit more time away from the house or with other people of like-mindedness, is a big thing for me, because my family doesn't understand why I need AA now that I'm sober. They think now that I'm sober, I should just be able to stay sober. And they didn't understand either, like, why my kids weren't enough in and of itself, because I had known ever since a kid, the second I tried anything, I was going to be balls to the freaking walls and there was going to be no stopping me. And that's how it's been every time I've relapsed. It's gone from 0 to you're going to wish you're dead in like 0.2 seconds. And I've come to that realization that I cannot, and God forbid will never do that again, because I will end up dead next time. My body can't take it anymore. I've done so much damage to it in a short period of time, along with the health issues that I have without my usage. I'll end up dead next time I relapse. And I can't do that to my kids. It took me a while to realize that was, and I don't want to offend anybody else if somebody has had a family member do it, but that's the easy way for the person doing it. But then that would be the worst thing in the world, especially leaving behind my kids, for them to think it would be their fault or something of that sort. It took me a lot of processing to figure that out too. But for me, like, the fellowship of having the other people around to be able to go hang out and just bullshit for hours for absolutely nothing, talk about absolutely freaking nothing, going to my first concert since I was 11, and no one expect anything from me or expect anything in return from me for it. I like the fact of having people that I can talk to, and my stories or the things that I say are not completely horrific. And I don't get these looks like you need to be locked up. Because I already know I do. Done it to myself already. I had only ever been picked up or arrested one time, and for me, I cannot do the isolation part. I was from a small town, so all the cops knew who I was, and knew why I had gone down my rabbit hole, because it was huge news back where I was from. So they tried for the longest time to give me leniency regarding the things I was doing and what I was doing to myself, until they had they realized that I was going to end up killing myself. So they gave me one of those scared straight tactics. I had a warrant for my arrest for a failure to appear on a traffic ticket. They took me into jail, put me in solitary, covered my sally port, and refused to answer for 4 days. That was one of the worst times of my life, because I had nobody, not even any human contact. The only human contact I had is when they brought me my food. Was not put in general pop or anything like that. I can't do that at all. So kudos to Crawford County. They found one way of kind of getting through to me at a point in time, because I knew the things that I was doing, I was going to end up in prison. And I didn't want my kids to be visiting behind plexiglass either. Inside the book, there's like, the fellowship for me is a big thing. It's like, when I'm willing to do the right thing, I'm rewarded with an inner peace no amount of liquor could ever provide. When I am unwilling to do the right thing, I become restless, irritable, and discontent. It is always my choice. Through the 12 steps, I have been granted the gift of choice. I am no longer at a mercy of a disease that tells me the only answer is to drink. If willingness is the key to unlock the gates of hell, it is action that opens those doors so we may walk freely among the living. Over the course of my sobriety, I have experienced many opportunities to grow. I have had struggles and achievements. Through it all, I have had not to take a drink, nor have I ever been alone. Willingness and action have seen me through it all. With the guidance of a loving higher power and the fellowship of the program, when I am in doubt, I have faith and things will turn around as they should. And when I am afraid, I reach for a hand of another alcoholic to steady me. And that's like because I still do it, like I will get down this little rabbit hole in my head where I start thinking the what ifs and this and this and this is gonna, and for me, reaching out and talking to other people or just being able to be around other people is a big thing for me. And I never really had that growing up, even with my brothers, because I was the only girl, I was the oldest. I was supposed to be the smart one, so they were involved in things that I was not privy to, hence why like there was a giant separation of things, and same thing with my parents. So like for the longest time I didn't understand why I was the solo one, like why I was never allowed to be around everybody, why I wasn't allowed to go do things with the rest of the family, why I wasn't allowed to be at certain places and parties, even though it was all family members. Till I became a lot older and realized why. I give them kudos for that in a sort of, because it did keep me out of my rabbit hole, I think, or at least from experimenting at a earlier age. But it was also kind of a detriment, because when I did get into my that whole thing, started realizing that Uncle John is not really my uncle, that he's something else, and that was a whole little learning experience for me too. And then in the book also, for like the fellowship, it says, "But we are in a gloom lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. So we think cheerful and laughter make for usefulness. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst out merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. But why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered, and we have given the power to help others. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears. Through it once was that for many of us, but it is clear we made our own misery. God didn't do it. Avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery, but if trouble comes, cheerful capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate his omnipotence." And for me, like, being able to be sober and realize that the things that I went through and I've gone through made me who I am today. And even though I can't ever go back and change anything, and I don't think I ever actually would, because then I wouldn't be where I am. Maybe a little less hard blows sometimes. But if I couldn't be able to laugh about it or talk about it, then I wouldn't be able to get past it or possibly be able to help somebody else. Be able to know that what they're going through is not a solitary thing. And that's what I want to do, is be able to help other people. My addiction wasn't a very long period of time, so I don't have a whole huge amount to talk about. Because my kidnapping happened in 2020. That was the very first time I ever used anything. I was 31 years old. Like I said, addiction can take a lot from you in a very short period of time. My addiction was a 2-year span, and it cost me everything I owned, cost me my kids, cost me a lot, but also in that retrospect, it was because of the hard times, it has brought my kids closer to me. I accepted my 3-year chip last month, and for my 2 older sons to pull me aside independently on their own and tell me, you have nothing to apologize to us anymore for. You did the best with what you were given, because they knew what had happened to me. They said, we know why you did it. My oldest especially, he says, you have nothing to be upset about anymore. You doing, and it's called a living amends, basically. Daily amends is my presence and my sobriety and me being there on a day-by-day basis and being able to pick that phone up when they do call instead of letting it ring and ring and ring, because that's what I would do during my addiction, because I refused to talk to them if I was inebriated, because I've refused for them to hear me that way. I didn't want them to see me that way. I was raised in a household like that. It took me a long time to realize that that was a harm, because a lot of us think that we don't harm anybody if we don't physically do something or they're not around to see us do it. For me, it took a very long time to realize that my absence from them was just as detrimental to them as them being in the house with me. Because when you're not there and they call, their brains go to somewhere very dark as well. And so for me, I have to be there, answer that phone 2 o'clock in the morning when my 17-year-old's calling me, because if I don't answer that phone call, if I don't answer after 3 calls, I'm getting a message from my mother going, if you don't call me back, I'm sending a welfare check for you. And for a while, it took me a long time to understand that. At first, I thought she was just being very controlling, that I'm almost 40 years old, why are you doing this, what's going on? And it was because I had programmed them that way. When I would not answer the phone and they were never able to get a hold of me for days on end, that's where their brains would go, is wondering if I'm alive, if I'm okay, what's going on, what happened. So for me, a daily amends of answering those phones, being present, being able to go to school activities, being able to give the hard life lessons of girlfriends, and that they're all fucking batshit crazy, okay? I don't care what anybody says. Girlfriends to teenage boys are all batshit crazy. Teaching him how to drive, and for my 9-year-old, just being there so he can hug, because I missed a good portion of that earlier time that I'm not going to get back. And for him, he's the biggest one I'm going to have to do a daily amends on, because for him, he's gotten used to me not being there. And so he's having to learn that I'm not going anywhere and that he can rely on me. My older boys had that from me at an early age. I was always there, constantly. Had the schedules on the wall. I was the OCD mom. Like, schedules on the wall, time frames of what we're doing. Like, we would go on vacations every spring break, every summer, all of that. My youngest son didn't get that. And I'm going to have to, I'm not going to be able to make time up for it, but being able to make those new memories of doing things and doing stuff with them. And I'm just blessed that I have that opportunity, that I did get sober in time, that I did not die before I was able to do that with them. And for me, the steps work. You do them in order, you do them thoroughly, you're honest with yourself. Because trust me, I did some fucked up shit. And the only thing I can say is God was watching out for me, because I should have been dead a multitude of times. I'm talking, and even though, and I've said this probably in the rooms when it first happened, right after my kids got taken is when I had to go testify against the man that kidnapped me and almost killed me. Even though the court case didn't go exactly as we had hoped, because he was facing 66 years, but because I wouldn't name drop, and then there was parts of the incident that I couldn't recall because of the assault, he only got charged with my assault. And for a little while right after that, I was completely distraught. But then realizing that I don't have control over anything. I can't change what had occurred. I got my story out. I was able to say what had happened. It's on record. So if anything ever does happen again in that regards with that same individual, there's at least a trail to show. I learned stuff at my trial as well to be able to aid somebody else that might go through the same thing. So that way I can help them understand what needs to be taken and what steps need to be done, so that way they can have a better chance of getting justice for themselves, because I was not aided in that aspect. So I'm just hoping the things that I've gone through and the things that I've learned in the book and in the rooms with everybody will hopefully help somebody else at some point. And I don't know. With that, I'm done.